All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're here for another episode of Blank Canvas. Thanks for joining. Thanks for tuning in. We are here to discuss today creativity and commerce, which a big part of the challenge that I hope that we can overcome within the creative economy is how to be profitable, how to be sustainable, and how to ensure that our business and the business of creativity is appreciated and is able to transcend beyond just a mom and pop type element. So today I have with me entrepreneur, director, creative himself, and now venture capitalist, Dmitri Dawkins, CEO of Graft Ventures. Dmitri, greetings, brother.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so let's talk about sustainability and creativity, and sustainability from a business standpoint. Many of our creatives, they have what it takes to create, of course, but we find that there's a lack of sustainable business within the creative economy. How can we, or what advice can you give that ensures that the creatives that are in business now and are looking to start business survive beyond just a few years?
Right. So the first thing I would want to touch on is value. And when as a creative, as an entrepreneur, anybody trying to solve a problem, you have to be able to identify what is the value of that product or service that you're offering in the first place. When it is that you're offering true value, then you find that you get greater and greater demand for it based on who you're targeting that value at. And then secondly, value, this is the outside of the quality of your work, the impact that your work is being done, it needs to be paired with the right business model. And I think especially for all creatives, everybody who has ever wanted to build something, make something, do anything, without the right business model, it's not going to be sustainable in the long term.
Yeah, understand. Understand.
And without the right business model, meaning also just the method of how income will be coming in over time. Whether you're going to get it up front or as royalties later on, or etc.
So explain then for me, one, for those who may not necessarily have the insight, what is a business model? And two, how does a creative realize what business model is right for their line of work?
Right. So a business model, first off, good question. What is the easier way to explain this? It's your approach to earning money doing what you're doing, right? Sometimes that involves different pricing models, whether it is that, it costs you $100 to make something and you add on 20%, so you'd have the cost plus pricing model. And then there are different pricing models. Sometimes you just feel in your spirit that, boy, this thing is worth $500 and I'm going to charge $500. You don't know where the $500 really came from, but you spoke to 10 different people and all 10 people are willing to pay $500. So that is the price.
That's what you're good.
The real term for it is value-based pricing, because that's what your customer base has perceived.
Right.
And then outside of that, then you can think of, okay, so I have my price set, but how will I accept this money over time? Is it that I'm going to charge you the $500 up front, or am I going to then tell you, hey, you're going to need this product or service every single month, so I'm going to charge you $400 every single month if you agree to sign up for 6 months right now. Or if it is that, yeah, I'm working on a production, I'm working on a project, you pay me upfront right now for the work that I'm doing. And then if you have a certain level of success over time, or you hit certain targets, then I'd like some form of long-term incentive, which is like the royalty-based method. And I mean, for sales or product developers, you have other models that suit like that.
Okay.
Right.
But in terms of now aligning with a particular model, and I think it may boil down to experimentation in some instances. We want to be able to ensure that persons have a clear appreciation for what direction to go in from the start. It takes time and effort to actually build a
Right.
business and build a brand and build something of value. But if you've been building on the wrong thing, it's difficult for you to actually start over. So
Right.
in terms of the alignment, let's say hypothetically, I am an artist or a painter, and not to use just a common artisan, but I'm a painter. How do I determine what is a suitable business model for me? Do I charge upfront for my art? Do I lease my art to galleries? What is it that person should consider when thinking about finding a
Right.
business model?
So here comes in the personal financial planning, right? How do your expenses come in? Do you have? I mean, everybody has some amount of recurring expenses. We have utilities to pay every month. You may have rent or a mortgage or other things like that. And then other expenses as well. It might just be one-off. Let's just say car insurance or stuff like that. That will then determine, and then on top of that, your own cash buffer will then determine how if you can afford to explore certain business models or not. So the person that has, let's just say a month worth of expenses in reserve, can then afford to, okay, I can wait 30 days to get paid for something, or maybe even wait 45 days because I have enough money to live regardless, right? But then the person who may not have as much reserve or has high expenses regularly coming in batches would have to think, listen, I need to get paid upfront to make sure I can build up enough buffer so that as these expenses come in, I can just clear them.
Right.
So, and then of course, there's a blend of that as well. So if it is that, you have certain jobs that come in or you're producing X amount of products or services, and that's going to cover your base expenses every single month, but you get a large one-off project, you might be able to have you could wait a longer terms to get paid for that large project because you just know that's going straight to, I don't know, special savings or another budget altogether because your regular budgeted expenses are covered.
Right.
So it's understanding your needs, it's understanding the customer needs as well, because sometimes you mentioned, as a painter, somebody comes and commissions a large piece of work from you. This piece of work is going to say cost $500,000, right? But you know that this customer, it's also going to take you 6 months to do it. Charge a customer $100,000 per month. It's easier on their cash flow rather than taking out $500,000 one time. And you haven't necessarily incurred all the expense of creating that piece up front. So it's a win-win situation for both. You get consistent cash for what is our large one-off project, but also the customer finds it easier because they don't have to write a check or do a transfer, for $500,000 one time.
Right. A challenge that I have encountered working in the marketing agency and within the creative space is that oftentimes, especially now as you matriculate from doing business with your peers to doing business with large companies and or corporations, that the creative has to almost fit within the cycle of payment that this corporation or company has.
Right.
And that oftentimes affects the creative's business negatively, because if I'm going to do or I'm commissioned to create, whether it is a campaign, painting, video production, some piece of content delivery for this company or this brand, and their payment method is 60 days.
Right.
And I have not necessarily budgeted all that I need to last me for another 60 days, but I still can't take or not take this job.
Right.
And then I am now being put into a position where I have to wait probably 75 days because unfortunately 60 days.
Something fell off the side of the table.
Yeah.
And the invoice was lost or something.
And the accountant was on vacation for a week, and then there's a backlog. How do we mitigate against that?
There are a couple of ways. For one, you can price it in. Let's talk about financing some more. I think the best approach probably is to use what's called receivables financing. If it is that you're working with a large corporate that people trust overall, you can get receivables financing where you issue that invoice. The financier will then pay you normally between 80 to 90% of that invoice upfront, and then they will charge 2 to 5% per month for each month that invoice is not paid. And they just collect that from the large customer afterwards. So let's use an example. Some of the good reputation like Awisinko or Grace or any other big companies. You got this great project with them. As you say, 60 days. You then create the invoice. The financier will then, let's say, pay like 80% of the funds. They wait the 60 days, they get paid, and then they remit to you the varying difference. If there's another 10% left over, you still have another 10% to collect. And then what you do is that once again in your pricing model, you add that financing expense to your costs to understand what you're paying for. On the flip side, if it is that you went to say, and even as an individual, say you got a line of credit from a bank, Scotiabank, NCB, etc., or whether it be a credit card, whether it be a personal line of credit, they have like Scotia line, stuff like that. Just know that, listen, you have this line of credit solely for the purpose of financing these projects.
Right.
Don't use it for anything else other than financing the projects.
Right.
And once again, adding that cost in. So you know that, okay, really and truly, your margin should be 20% on this project or 30%, but you're adding in another 5 to 10% for financing costs.
Right.
And then the other thing is that really and truly, some of these projects you should just not take on. If it is that you realize that you're going to make a 10 or 15% margin off of a deal, but you're going to end up spending most of that money back in financing, you're really and truly just working for the bank and not for yourself. I think that in everyone's pricing model, the majority of the margin should remain within the company, and that's going to give you the free cash flow to scale and grow over time, because we're talking about sustainability.
Right.
You have to be able to have enough margin to reinvest in new equipment, to learn new things, to hire people, so that way you have a team around you, and scale and go from there. Because especially in the creative industry, I think the creative industry actually has more potential in the Caribbean than even technology.
I believe so. And on that point, it strikes me that creatives are the cornerstone of society, in my mind, because creatives create culture.
Right.
And culture is what evolves society as is. So I think there's a great emphasis that needs to be paid to the creative economy. But my question is it that there should be a greater portion of investment being done for creatives, or should creatives learn new ways how to invest and reinvest in themselves, and learn new ways how to raise capital? Because sometimes there is no startup investment. There is no, I have this $1 million put aside for my project. There is the calling that I get. I feel like I want to do this, and I have now chosen to do this, but I don't want to live the life of the starving creative.
Right.
So talk to me a little bit about the investments that are existing within the landscape of Jamaica, because I think that a lot of creatives don't know where to start when it comes to probably one, raising funds, two, seeking financing, or even financial advice as to how to ensure that their business gets from 0 to 100.
Right. So first off, I think the first question was, should we be investing more in creatives? And I absolutely think we should. We've actually seen more investment recently, more from a grant perspective and different programs that have been offered. The second part is, I think creatives should be reinvesting in other creatives as much as possible. And we've seen this sort of iterate over the years. I mean, you look at all the studios that have popped up.
Right.
Once upon a time, you'd have to go to, one of the big four studios.
Right.
And if you don't get into there, then you can't record a song. But now, everybody, of course, the prices for equipment has come down. And then people have taken money from one song, one album, one project that they did, and then built their own studio and scaled up from there. And then let's support all these other artists coming up. Coming back to like the business model, etc. If you understand and have a true business model, then I'd say yes, definitely go for financing. If you one day got up and just said, listen, I have this project in mind, I want to get it done, but I don't know how I'm going to finance it, I think the first question should be, I have this project in mind, I want to get it done, and this is how I'm going to make money from it. At the end of the day, all investors are going to be looking for what sort of return am I going to have. The return is not necessarily monetary in value, because you do have impact investors as well who want they're willing to give up some of their returns as long as it's creating a socioeconomic impact, hiring more people, environmental sustainability, et cetera. But once you understand how it is that your project is going to return and the method by which it's going to return, the capital invested, that's when you can begin that conversation. So depending on the project, I mean, this is a very broad scope, but depending on the project, you're going to look at a blended finance approach. Certain things will require debt financing, where you try to go to a traditional bank or maybe a non-traditional lender, I should say, who's willing to lend for this type of project.
Yeah.
Right.
We'd have a better chance with a non-traditional lender than the bank.
Right. Yeah. And then, otherwise you have grant programs. Recently, we've had quite a range of grant programs that are available to. I mean, Jampro has been promoting a whole lot of stuff. You have Caribbean Development Bank that has been promoting different grant programs for creatives as well. There have been a couple of programs out of the OECS. And then from an equity side, equity has been like the hardest thing to get, I think, because we don't really have anybody focused on the equity investments in creative industry.
Right.
So there have been
a big problem.
Big problem. There have been a couple of people that have tested things. I'm not too sure about success because transparency or just data is another issue that we have.
Yeah.
We're the cultural hub of the world, but but there's no real data showing what the commercial aspect, like how much money is truly being made from the creative industry, and so it's hard to quantify the risk really of investing in this, because if you don't know how much projects fail versus how many succeed or just how many projects there are overall, there's no way to know if is this a good proposal or not, especially when something hasn't come across your desk before. And I'd like to big up Jampro at this point, because they've really been trying to invest in getting more financing for the creative industry. I know I participated on a mission, I think it was in 2018, with a group of other financiers, and we went to LA to learn about the film industry and how that's truly been financed, and the models and approaches and things like that. But it hasn't really translated yet. And I say yet because everyone is interested in doing, in financing creatives and financing film projects or things like that. But to be honest, the deal floor, the creatives coming to approach have not had very good proposals, or not the ones that I've seen or that we've discussed. The projections can be tested some more, right? To be more accurate or more feasible, I think. And as well, it's just, the other thing is that, I guess, coming back to that data, like, how do we know what makes a successful project or not? And with any creative project, there's no way of really knowing. I mean, all the big directors, whoever, have films that flop every now and then, right?
Of course. Is there a way, because even though Jampro has been doing tremendous work, I still think that it goes over a lot of people's head. I still think that there is a gap between the communication from these entities to the audience in which they intend to actually have the conversation with. So
Right.
you may have someone who is probably at home sitting on a wonderful idea, all penciled out, but didn't even know that Jampro is
Right.
offering this, and didn't know that one of the first steps that I could take is actually going to Jampro to get some more
Right.
information on this. So my thoughts around that are, it segues a little bit into the educational aspect of it, and persons not having the right tools to start with, because most creatives leaving school didn't study anything
Right.
creative at all. This is something that they have gone into a new realm in its entirety,
Right.
in actually trying to produce something, and actually trying to create something, and actually trying to create value, whether that value is for culture, socio-economic impact, as you had mentioned, but there's no real education on creativity and business.
Right.
And I think as your previous role in Branson, how was that for you in terms of realizing that persons who probably come to you, because you were the entrepreneurship director, but persons who come to you with an idea, there's a disparity
Right.
between what they want to do and what they can actually do based off of what they know.
Right.
How was that
So
experience?
yeah, this is also a very big topic. All right, so let's talk about awareness and education first. Yeah, we definitely need a whole lot more awareness of programs available. I mean, I've seen grant funding that just goes unused because
Yeah.
nobody applies for it, etc.
Right.
And it's very hard. Like you have to sign up to like 20 different mailing lists in order to even know that
Right.
this exists.
Right.
Outside of that, on the education side, go to Caribbean Development Bank, Jampro. Just do a Google as far as like Caribbean Creative Grants, and anything that has ever popped up, sign up to one of their mailing lists to ensure that you can get alerted the next time funding comes around.
Okay.
But outside of that, on the education side, creativity is a talent, right? And a very niche talent. At the same time, business structuring, business proposals, plans, etc., is also a talent.
Talent. Absolutely.
And I think that when we talk about sustainability of industry, we have to be able to pair the business with the creativity. One person can't do it all, and it's very hard for a very creative person to also be the person in Excel
That's
doing all
in
the
the business.
projections. Yeah.
Right, right.
So definitely say find someone that you trust, that you have an agreement with, binding agreement as far as an approach,
Pen and paper, contracts.
contracts, etc. As far as how you guys are partnered, all the terms, and then work with that person to come up with your commercial proposals, etc. Going forward for financing, for sales, for anything else. So that way you can do what you do best on the creative side, and they can do their best on their creativeness in that proposal, right? It's hard to find that matching pair.
Yeah.
And this is where I'd segue into, the Branson Center and what I found there, because oftentimes the entrepreneurs that would come into our program, they are doers. They've found a problem, they've made a solution, and they fix that problem very, very well. But they often are by themselves. And there's a lot of data online. You can look at the Global Accelerator Learning Initiative. They have an open data set where they collect data from emerging markets as well as developed markets as well. And you can just see how companies with co-founders with complementing skills grow at a faster rate than individual founders.
Yeah.
Right? So even if you've started something before and you've even achieved, you have payroll, you're covering all the expenses, etc., you still should probably consider getting a co-founder to properly balance you, or at least build out that structure for sustainability. So what we were doing at the Branson Center was just that, helping companies to scale to the next level. We realized a lot of people were stuck at the micro stage. They started a small business and they stayed
And they're still a small business. Yeah.
And we want to get them scaling up to medium and large companies, right? And so we're introducing them to governance by creating a 5-member advisor board. So that way, it's not just you making decisions in your head. On a quarterly basis, you present your financials, you share the challenges that you're having. You get advice on these things. You can have other people, based on their expertise, push you in different directions to, challenge you and, a lot to hone your skills, right?
Yeah.
And that's very important because when you're stuck in a vacuum, you don't grow as fast.
Yeah.
Right. But at the same time, you don't want to go on Twitter and talk about all your problems, right? Because then people begin to question your leadership, etc.
Right.
So work with that core group. The other aspects that we were working on was topics like training for operational efficiency. Where are the bottlenecks in your production? How do you fix these bottlenecks? How do you increase your efficiency overall? We're looking at financial optimization. Do you know what your ratios are, like say an inventory turnover ratio, or let's just if you're in a service industry, then how much of your capacity are you using? Are you at 90% capacity? Do you need to hire more team members? Do you understand all the risks, etc.?
Right.
Things like that. Leadership skills. We had a lot of entrepreneurs come in who were not millennials. What's the generation before? But the thing is that there was a huge gap with leadership, where the way that they learned leadership and learned how to run companies as an older generation did not relate well with the new millennials and even coming up now, the Gen Zs, because it's just an entirely different style.
Approach, yeah.
So how do you work with a diverse team now and still eke out productivity and maintain a good company culture?
Yeah.
Right. And then the final aspect was definitely financing. We're helping entrepreneurs pitch for financing. The Branson Center has an equity deal room where they pull together 6 private equity investors to review deals on every 6 months. So what would happen is once you're ready, they prep you, and you go through a lot of prep sessions, some light due diligence beforehand, and then just you get an opportunity to pitch in front of the investors, which is about 80% of the capital available in Jamaica at once, just one room, one go.
Wow.
So you don't have to do this running around back and forth.
Yeah. As you mentioned, investment. So I'm going to ask you to go a little bit into your new project, Graft Ventures. But my question is, before you start that, the challenge that we've realized is that, one, there is a disparity between the educational aspect in terms of what to do, how to do it, and actually getting to the space where you start that production or that creation. Is there any way that there can be funds allocated for experimenting? Because experimenting is probably the best test to see if this actually works or if it doesn't work. Is there anything like that exists within the space? So, we're not talking about you giving $1 million, but let's say you give $100,000 and see what can happen with this seed funding. Sometimes you just need to get the engine going. So here's a spark, $200,000, whatever it is,
right.
But just something that helps you to start the experiment to see if this was either a test that is worth carrying out or this is a complete fail. But the experimenting part, it still needs funding.
Right. So I know that Kingston Creative is actively working on stuff like that to see if they can get funding for small grants. People can experiment with different things, etc. And I think they're trying to use a model where it's not as onerous to go through this long application process, etc. As well, I know that the Development Bank of Jamaica, through their Ignite program, has been trying to push things like that as well. That's definitely way more onerous, but as well, it's high risk capital. In other words, you're shooting for the moon
Right.
and want to try something, and they're like, okay, here you go.
Right.
We trust you.
Right.
Let us know how this works.
How this works, yeah.
I mean, and you're going to have to put in the reporting, but
Of course.
you get the capital for it, right?
Yeah.
But really, I think that's where creatives need to support other creatives. You know, you have a successful project or something come off. Guess what? Put aside 10, 15% and try to either experiment yourself or provide that to some other creative that you see is doing something, testing something, and allow them to go ahead and test that.
Yeah.
But it's really coming down to risk, and especially now during COVID, like, first time I'm mentioning COVID. Yeah. Capital is hard to come by at this point because especially, you know, everybody's trying to keep their companies afloat.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, we need to be able to support each other through that. But I know that Kingston Creative is working on this as well. And they have, from the education aspect, Kingston Creative has their own creative accelerator program that I'm not sure if it started already. I think they put a hold on it because of COVID. But you can check out their website. I'll give you the link afterwards.
Sure.
And, you know, big up Andrea and Joel for all of their work on that side and the new hub that they have building out downtown.
Oh, that's them. Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, I've seen some of the images and stuff. That's really amazing. So yeah, tell me about Graft.
Yeah. So Graft Ventures, I mean,
new creation.
Yeah, new creation. So first off, to give the context, our tagline is people, planet, profit, growing together. Right? We're very much about sustainability. I wanted to make sure we have a true impact and that we can create this ecosystem where, like, the Caribbean is going to create the next great business leaders overall, right? So while working at the Branson Center and working with entrepreneurs and getting the funding and etc., I realized that there was this gap. Entrepreneurs need financing, of course, but oftentimes the checks that our investors want to write were larger. For those of you that don't know, there's been a whole lot of investment activity in the last 5 years. There are lots of deals going back and forth. And when you look at from an investor's perspective, when they have $50 million US to invest, the larger the check is,
the better the return.
Well, not necessarily the better the return, but you just need to deploy a certain amount of capital.
Right.
But there's that due diligence process or deal flow process is very tedious.
Yeah.
So if you go through a 3-month process to determine if you're going to invest in a person, a company, etc., whether it's a $100,000 US check or a $5 million US check, it's the same process. So as far as just time efficiency, you want to be able to write as big a check as possible.
Oh, okay, got you.
Right? So when you approach some of these companies, they are willing to look at your small deal for 300,000 or 500,000 US, but it just has to absolutely wow them. And on top of that, you have to find the right time. Like, do they have the time availability? Because if they have 5 deals in front of them for 5 million US each, oftentimes they're going to look at those first. Right? So I created Graft Ventures so that way I can work with those larger investors directly, accept the larger checks from them, and be able to then work with the smaller deals, the 500,000 US, $300,000 directly. And the thing is that my experience coming out of the Branson Center and being an entrepreneur over the years and just being part of the ecosystem, I very much know and understand the challenges.
Yeah.
Right? I think that most would agree that, you know, my working with you as an entrepreneur directly is going to have a better experience than necessarily working with somebody who's just dealing with large-scale finance on a daily basis and doesn't understand that day-to-day struggle that you're having, or the support that you need. Because that's the other thing. People love to, you know, they want to apply for financing or get some investment, but they always think that I have to have everything ready and set. And if you have everything structured, proper, everything, you don't need investment. You don't need financing. Right? So it's when you realize that, hey, I have this business with huge potential, but I need help to get there. And I really want to bring on a partner to help me get there, to give me that financing, to give me that support, that additional governance, etc., that's when you call us at Graft Ventures, and we work with you to see what the needs are, test your own models with you, see how it is that we can get it to scale. And we're not here looking for the next Facebook or Google or
right.
That would be nice, but it's frankly just not part of our model. When you're looking for unicorns all the time, it's just hard to find. You have to write tons and tons of checks. You have to invest hundreds of millions of dollars. I mean, people have financing rounds, 5, 10 financing rounds now. It's insane. But what we've seen here in Jamaica, I mean, if you look at even our top 10 companies on the stock exchange, you can have real companies that are producing real positive cash flow, and there might not be $1 billion in value, but there could be $50 million in value, and that company is employing thousands of people, is contributing towards pensions, they're paying taxes, they're creating real products, right? And those are the companies that we want to help support. Like I don't need you to grow 1,000% over the next 10 years, but as we start a 10-year journey, it's basically like a marriage, then I want to help you to grow maybe 10x or a 20x over time. And we're going to use all of our resources to get you to sustainably grow, to be resilient, so that way if a COVID comes up or anything else, you have cash in the bank. You can say, I don't necessarily need to lay off all my employees or things like that. So that way we can build a better community, better business. And at the same time, we want a lot of innovation too. I think that here in the Caribbean, we have a ton of advantage over other developed markets. I also think that we've been focusing too much on developed markets, and that we should also focus on other emerging markets. So when I look at the Commonwealth, I mean, frankly, many of the Commonwealth countries share the same issues. Jamaica is part of the Commonwealth, but we only have, just short of 3 million people, right? But then if you go over to a Nigeria or a Kenya or a India or somewhere else, you have much larger populations. So is the problem that you've solved here in Jamaica also a problem that exists in this much larger market? It's expensive to break into, say, a US or European market. But then I was having a conversation with somebody last year from an accelerator program in India, and he had explained that the local telecom had upgraded everybody's feature phones to smartphones, right? And for the first time, 700 million people got access to the internet for the first time in 1 year. The US population is 410 million.
Right.
So here you have, 150% of the US population getting access to the internet.
Yeah.
One go.
Yeah.
These guys have no experience with user experience, anything else, apps, anything before. You can, once again, I'm not, this isn't being disingenuous or anything like that. Create a real valuable solution. This person has never seen any other competitor or anybody else offering this solution. Offer that to that person and see how it just scales. Because you know what? When people find something useful, they recommend it to their friends and say, this is it. This is what you do. You know?
Become shareable.
Right. And go from there. So I think that we have huge potential to, scale and expand, especially into other emerging markets. This is what our strength is. We understand operating in a deficit and not having everything in place. And so therefore that's an advantage for us for helping our peers. Right. So yeah, I'm very passionate about it. I think that I've gotten great feedback from our investors, great feedback from entrepreneurs. I'm hoping to close my first couple of deals by the end of July, and it's going full 100 at this point. It's really good. If anybody's looking for it, so I'm looking for businesses with tech-enabled operations that's operating in the Caribbean. You can be doing products or services, no particular sector, but you're just looking to scale and grow. You have this big picture idea. I'm not looking for startups at this point. I'm looking for existing businesses.
Okay.
So if you're earning about 200,000, 300,000 US a year already, you've been in operations for 2 years, but you realize that you have this much larger opportunity available. Like you can see yourself growing to be the next JMB or Wisinko or, then yeah, that I want you to call me at that point or email me. You can send me your information, pitch at Graft Ventures, and we go from there.
Okay, great. So tell me now, for the guy who isn't in operation yet, don't have $1,000 US, but has an idea, where would you send him? Where would you recommend that person goes with their pitch?
Well, it depends. If it's just an idea, I think that what you need to do first is test the idea, right? So I recommend that everybody first complete a business model canvas, which is just like a one-page business plan. It has different headings on there. There are tons of videos on YouTube, etc., how to make and complete one, or you can check out like canvanizer.com has a nice template there you can fill out. So once it makes sense on this one-page business plan, then you just have to test the assumptions. You can do something as simple as run a small ad on like Twitter or Facebook to just run a poll. Do you have this problem? How much are you willing to pay to fix it? So therefore that creates your initial lead list.
Right.
Like, yeah, I found 100 people that
with this shared common problem.
Right.
And they are willing to pay
this amount
for it.
Right. Then the other thing after that would be then, depending on what you need to do to create the solution. So some people go the crowdfunding route and say they're working on this. You can pay ahead online and we'll fulfill months down the line. Some people go to an angel investor to try to get that first check. Or, you have what's called the FFF round. Friends, family, and fools to help you, get off that.
Daddy might have an idea.
Yeah, to get that minimum viable product or minimum viable service ready to go and to test and gain some traction. And I say this because it's really easy to just test and gain a little bit of traction. And traction is always going to be like the number one factor with attracting financing.
Okay.
Right? When you can show me that you have interest or you've actually already earned money, etc., then yeah, but you do need support. So there are a ton load of different accelerator programs available online now because people have shifted online because of COVID. But here directly in Jamaica, like the Branson Center is focused on the scale-up side of things, but JBDC has a seed stage program that you can apply for. I'm not sure, once again, because of COVID, when they're restarting, but that's available. That's for free most times. Outside of JBDC, there's Sisters Inc. that provides a lot of business support and help. They'll help you with your business plan. You can get the vouchers for technical assistance from DBJ to help cover the cost. So you determine that, okay, I have this idea, I want to do it, and I need to flesh it out. I need a business plan created. You can apply for a voucher at dbjvoucher.com. They give you a $200,000 voucher for a business plan, and then like Sisters Inc. or a Paramount Business Solutions or a couple other people will actually just write this business plan with you. Not for you, but with you, because you're you're the one with the idea, right? So you have to put in all these elements, but they're going to help you structure it, make sure that it's then ready to go before other people, right? So JBDC's program, who else has a program ongoing now? I'm not sure if Founder Institute has started their program back up yet, but there's Founder Institute, fi.co. As I mentioned, Kingston Creative has a new accelerator program that they're launching as well, so you can check that out. And this is, once again, idea stage. And I know that TIC has a couple of programs, Technology Innovation Center up at UTech. UE has an accelerator program for idea stage companies for students or graduates of UE. Directly that you can apply for as well. That's through the Mona School of Business, but I forget the name right now. Yeah, I think that's most everybody.
Yeah, that's a comprehensive list.
But yeah, but the very first thing, I personally, if it is a really good idea and good approach, then test it, then find a great business co-founder to work with you, and just spend the time. It's going to be a hell of a ride. Right, I'll dissuade everybody from entrepreneurship right now. Like, it is nowhere as easy as you see it on TV. Instagram
Or in any other
any of the
magazines
magazines, any of these things, right? Any success you see is like 10 years in the making.
Yeah.
It doesn't include all the frustration, the late nights, the early mornings, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
You have to be willing to absolutely say, if I do not pursue this, I'm going to regret this for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And if you're not at that point, I would say don't pursue it.
Yeah.
Any at all. Like that should be the make or break decision. Yeah.
All right, Dmitri, thank you so much. I'd ask you to leave us with probably just your 3 points for any business right now within the creative industry. Whether we're talking about just general tips, because of course there's business after COVID and life does continue. But to ensure that we create sustainability, we create profit, and we create impact. Give me your last 3 pointers around those 3
It's
things.
tough. The very first thing is knowing when to say no. For too often we keep on saying yes to projects, to things that are not aligned with our strategic vision. And so you have to know when to say no and when things don't make sense. Even though you need this cash right now, etc., it's just going to cause more headache. Then the second thing is just that, managing your cash flow, knowing what you have to do, what you need to cut, or what you need to get in as revenue so that you can maintain your cash flow, because cash is king overall. If you can get that little bit of extra margin, you don't know where down the line it will be useful for you overall. And the third thing is definitely to manage your mental health and mental space, right? Like, don't be ashamed to speak to a therapist, speak to your friends, etc. You need to manage your mental health, otherwise you're going to burn out. It might mean that you just go to the beach one morning and sit down and listen to the waves, or use I recently started using the Calm app to just do a little bit of meditation each day. But you have to manage the mental space. Every single day there's a new announcement on the news that feels like the world is ending, right? so managing that mental space, ignoring the news if you need to, whatever it is, as long as you are remain calm, stable, etc. So know when to say no, more importantly than even when to say yes. Cash flow management, just what is going to be required to maintain that cash flow, and the resiliency of the cash flow, and protecting that your brain. Because without our mental space, then we can't be creative, we can't do anything.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Dmitri. This has been an excellent conversation. Greatly appreciate your time, and all the best with all your ventures with Graft Ventures.
Thanks.
All right, bro. Thank you.
All right.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Another episode of Blank Canvas. Thank you for tuning in. Don't forget, subscribe, comment, like, and share. And go out into the world, explore, and create.